Welcome to the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rakelli. We have an amazing episode planned for every single one of you, the audience that's watching right now. The sports world is getting busier and busier. I mean, we're getting into autumn, we're getting into winter. So that obviously means that we are going to have the best sports for everyone all around. Baseball postseason, fantastic. NBA regular season starting, brilliant. The NFL regular season right around the corner, fantastic. And you're going to have the NHL regular season. They're going to take off in about 1 month away. And there's still a lot of moves to be done in the NHL. We'll talk about that in hour number 2. But it's an amazing time to be a sports fan. If you are a football fan, there's all the action going on all around the world, all the matches in the leagues. AC Milan, for example, winning their matches recently. Shout out to AC Milan. You also have Formula One for all the people out there who watch auto racing. Max Verstappen dominating Sergio Perez, second best driver on the grid. NASCAR, you have the playoffs in NASCAR. So you're going to be seeing 16 of the best drivers in NASCAR compete to win a championship over the next 10 weeks. And in IndyCar, you're seeing a 4-way battle for the championship. So if you're a sports fan, if you're someone who loves sports, you are getting the best of both worlds. You are getting all the action in sports. Baseball postseason, NBA regular season, NHL regular season, NFL action. And if you're a college athletic fan, if you're someone like me who loves college football, go University of Utah, well, that's just around the corner as well. But while we're going to focus on that, there's one part I got to mention. This show is broadcasted in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is broadcasted in the sports entertainment capital of the world, the sports book capital of the world. This is Sin City. So it's only fair that we start out this show, episode 23 of the Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com, by mentioning the local hometown Las Vegas Raiders. It is only fair to everyone watching around the world who watches the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio to mention the Las Vegas Raiders, because I have a little bit of a rant, a little bit of an angle that I want to give everyone right now. The Las Vegas Raiders recently have waived 2021 first-round pick Alex Leatherwood. The offensive tackle from Alabama, the first-round pick, the guy who was drafted during the John Gruden, Mike Mayock era of the Las Vegas Raiders, has been waived. He has gone to the Chicago Bears, which is a fantastic opportunity for him. But I got a rant that I really need to talk about. For anyone who's a Las Vegas Raiders fan, try to debate this if you want, but here's the facts. Alex Leatherwood being cut is not my rant. John Gruden and Mike Mayock in their drafting in the first round is my rant. Now, I've been very critical of John Gruden. Even when he was the coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, I was very critical of John Gruden. I thought that he was an overrated, overhyped, too much stock in his own hype. You know, that type of coach. I thought that he wasn't the main person in Tampa Bay. He wasn't the guy who created the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That was a guy named Tony Dungy. Understand that I always believed, and even when he got signed to that mega 10-year deal with the Las Vegas Raiders, I always believed that John Gruden was not the mastermind. He was not the genius that people proclaimed him to be. And his drafting since 2018, from 2018 to 2021, should be the biggest indicator that not only was I correct, but we should have seen the rails and the train going off the train tracks. We should have seen it a long time ago. Understand that they drafted, and I want everyone to pay attention here. The Las Vegas Raiders had a trio of draft picks in 2018. They had back-to-back draft picks in 2020. They had Alex Leatherwood in 2021. Understand that the Las Vegas Raiders, I want everyone to appreciate what's about to come up. That the Las Vegas Raiders had bust after bust after bust. When it comes to the Las Vegas Raiders, this is an organization that took 5 steps backwards and 1 step forward. Now, I will give credit where credit is due. Max Crosby was a solid pick. Okay? Max Crosby has been the needle in the haystack for the Las Vegas Raiders. I will give him credit. But the rest of the organization, you can't. Rest of the draft picks is absolutely terrible. And just really to comprehend and really dig deep into what I am saying, we got to go back to the tenure of the drafting for the Las Vegas Raiders, the also Oakland Raiders back then. The Las Vegas Raiders in 2017, which was the first year John Gruden was the head coach. Understand that John Gruden and Mike Mayock, they started this journey that season. And that season, when they took over, they drafted offensive tackle Colton Miller. Now, Colton Miller has been a solid offensive lineman. Okay, he has been a above average offensive lineman in the NFL. But when you understand who got drafted after Colton Miller, it makes him look like a bust. At pick 16, the Buffalo Bills took Pro Bowl linebacker Tremaine Edmonds. At pick 17, 2 picks after Colton Miller, the Los Angeles Chargers picked Derwin James, one of the best safeties in the NFL. Jair Alexander from the Green Bay Packers went at 18, one of the best corners in the NFL. The Detroit Lions at 20 took Frank Ragnow, one of the top 2 centers in the NFL. Could you imagine if John Gruden and Mike Mayock had made the right decision and picked Frank Ragnow instead of Colton Miller? You know how great the defense would have been if the Las Vegas Raiders had taken a Jair Alexander or Derwin James to solidify the safety and solidify the defensive backs? So Colton Miller wasn't a bad pick, but when you put into frame and when you compare who Colton Miller was drafted behind, it makes John Gruden and Mike Mayock look terrible in comparison. So that was year number 1 of the Las Vegas Raiders drafting under John Gruden, under Mike Mayock, 2018, where 5 Pro Bowlers were drafted behind the guy they selected. All right, 2019. Now, thanks to Khalil Mack, thanks to Amari Cooper being gone, they had not 1, not 2, but a trio of draft picks. At number 4, they took Ceylon Farrell. All right, defensive end from Clemson, one of the biggest reaches in the draft. Everyone was making fun of them. Everyone was laughing at Oakland during that draft because Farrell was not supposed to go in the top 20. All right, he was going to be a late first-round pick, and yet the Las Vegas Raiders took him 4th overall. Now, who was the next pick behind Farrell? Who was the next pick the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selected? Oh, just linebacker Devin White, one of the best linebackers, one of the best young and up-and-coming linebackers in the NFL today. Linebacker Devin White, who helped the Buccaneers and was on that roster that won a Super Bowl a year and a half later. I mean, Devin White would be an excellent pick, and he was a defensive guy as well. At number 7, the Jacksonville Jaguars took linebacker Josh Allen. Josh Allen is a Pro Bowler as well. And since Darren Waller wasn't in the picture yet, 3 picks after Ceylon Farrell, the Detroit Lions took Pro Bowl tight end TJ Hawkinson. So the Las Vegas Raiders could have taken Hawkinson, could have taken Allen, could have taken White, but instead, John Gruden and Mike Mayock took Ceylon Farrell. A awful pick, a guy who is a backup to Max Crosby, who got drafted in the same draft, by the way. And they reached terribly on a guy who flamed out. They reached on a defensive end who couldn't hack it in the NFL. So 2018, they go for a tackle, and they had 5 Pro Bowlers immediately after it. 2019, they draft Farrell at number 4, and there's 3 Pro Bowlers immediately after him. And the next pick was a defensive-minded guy who's been a Pro Bowler. Oh, but we're not done, folks. At number 24, the Oakland Raiders, thanks to the Khalil Mack trade, got running back Josh Jacobs. Now, Josh Jacobs, in his defense, was a Pro Bowl running back at one point in his career. Josh Jacobs, in the beginning of his tenure, was a solid running back. But it's not about what did you do for me in 2019. It is about what have you done for me lately. And what Josh Jacobs has done for the Las Vegas Raiders recently is regress every single year. This is a guy who had 1,100 rushing yards in his rookie year and only could get 800 in 2021. This is a guy who had to miss several games last year and missed several games in 2020 due to injuries. Understand that Josh Jacobs is a guy who, unfortunately, has not become the franchise running back the Las Vegas Raiders needed. I only mention this because in this exact draft, and this is the part that actually is laughable, in the exact same draft as they selected Josh Jacobs, the very next running back that was taken, the very next running back that was selected off the board was Miles Sanders from the Philadelphia Eagles. Understand that Miles Sanders, yes, he's had injury concerns, but he has actually been staying at a consistent level in his career. Understand that Miles Sanders at least has been consistent, unlike Josh Jacobs has been. Heck, even the next running back that was taken after Miles Sanders, that ended up being Darrell Henderson, who once again has been a solid running back in the NFL. He's not flashy, but he was just part of a Super Bowl winning team out there in Los Angeles. So you had Josh Jacobs, a guy who kept going downhill, and they took him in the first round. And then the last pick they took, thanks to the Amari Cooper trade, they took safety Jonathan Abram at number 27. Now, Jonathan Abram, on paper, was not bad. However, when you understand that in his first year, he tore his rotator cuff and was out for the entire year. In 2020, he played majority of the year, but he really didn't do much in terms of performance. And then last year in 2021, he was placed on injured reserve with a shoulder surgery. So you have a guy like Jonathan Abrams, who's had only a trio of interceptions in his young career, has had only 11 pass deflections. This is a guy, Jonathan Abram, who is supposed to do more as a first-round pick coming out of Georgia, but he hasn't been that guy. Understand that Jonathan Abram has not become the safety of the future that the Las Vegas Raiders needed him to become. I only mention this because the very next guy that was really taken off the board, could you imagine if they had a Deebo Samuel who was taken after Jonathan Abram? Hey, since they so desperately needed help on the offensive line, how about a Pro Bowl center like Elton Jenkins who went to the Green Bay Packers? Or A.J. Brown, who's now part of the Philadelphia Eagles. He was taken in the same draft after Jonathan Abram. There is so many draft picks that was after Jonathan Abram that could have helped the Raiders out. So in the span of 2 seasons, Mike Mayock and John Gruden wasted 4 picks. They also wasted the Khalil Mack trade, and I'll explain more in detail in a second. But can we also acknowledge that the Amari Cooper trade backfired on Oakland? And they traded Amari Cooper because they believe that they had a receiver that was better, and then didn't replace Amari Cooper at the wide receiver position until years down the line. Terrible trade by the Las Vegas Raiders. And then we get into the infamous 2020 NFL Draft. Now, very quickly, I know there's going to be some people who are going to bring this up, so I will address it now. Yes, the remainder of the draft for the Las Vegas Raiders from the 2019 NFL Draft was solid. Max Crosby and Hunter Renfrow were drafted later in the draft. I also understand that Foster Moreau has been a solid backup tight end for the Las Vegas Raiders. And with them trading defensive back Trayvon Mullen, who was their second-round pick, here's the point I'm trying to establish. Las Vegas Raiders, Mike Mayock, and John Gruden, they found hidden gems lower in the draft. They found diamonds in the rough later in the draft. But you do not draft Trayvon Mullen to just trade him to Arizona for a conditional pick. You do not draft Ceylon Farrell at number 4. You do not draft Jonathan Abram in the first round. You do not draft Josh Jacobs in the first round. And then be happy with Max Crosby and Hunter Renfrow later in the draft. So here's my bone, and here's kind of my soft pitch I will do to you real quick. If the Las Vegas Raiders had drafted Max Crosby and Hunter Renfrow in the first round instead of Ceylon Farrell and Jonathan Abram, I would agree with you. Las Vegas had an excellent draft in 2019, but they didn't. They did not draft Crosby until pick 106. They did not draft Renfrow until 149. So because of the fact that they had to wait later in the draft to get those guys, that is why it's a disappointment. It is a reason why the Las Vegas Raiders should be held more accountable for how bad John Gruden and Mike Mayock set the team backwards in terms of drafting. Because this team really did not know how to draft in the first round. They really did not know how to draft in the second round when it came to the Mike Mayock / John Gruden era. Now, the infamous 2020 draft, which I talked about earlier, is very important. Because you got to understand the 2020 NFL draft class for the Las Vegas Raiders, it might be the worst draft class that we have seen in recent years. This might be the worst example of how to draft in a single year. So in the first round, they took speedy wide receiver from Alabama in Henry Ruggs. Now, Henry Ruggs had potential. Henry Ruggs had talent. And then he decided to be an idiot and kill somebody here in Las Vegas. Henry Ruggs decided to be an absolute... I can't say it on air because it's a PG show, but you know what I'm gonna say. Henry Ruggs killed someone because he couldn't just get behind the wheel and let somebody take an Uber, right? Henry Ruggs couldn't just, had a friend pick him up and avoid the entire thing. No. At 2 a.m, he had to drive 125 miles an hour, wreck into somebody, have her lose her life by having her car catch on fire, and now he is going to be spending the rest of his life in bars. So Henry Ruggs was a terrible pick. When in hindsight, was a terrible pick. Oh, and by the way, just to add more salt into the wound, the very next pick, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers took Pro Bowl tackle Tristan Wirfs from Iowa. And later in the draft, wide receivers CeeDee Lamb, who's a Pro Bowler in Dallas, and Justin Jefferson, Pro Bowler in Minnesota, was taken after Henry Ruggs. And then the second pick from 2020 that they, interesting enough, got in the Khalil Mack trade, they selected defensive back Damien Arnett from Ohio State. And what did Damien Arnett decide to do? How did Damien Arnett decide to congratulate and reward the Las Vegas Raiders for drafting him? Well, not only did he decide to get injured immediately, by the way, and spend his first season on IR, not only in his second year was he a backup on the depth chart and got injured earlier in the year. This guy decided to be an absolute doofus, and he started taking photos of him pointing guns at people. There was video of him making death threats to people. There's also the same Damien Arnett who is accused of injuring a woman in a 2020 car crash. Also, this is also the same guy who apparently slammed into a woman's car on his way to practice and did a hit and run in that same time frame. So I want everyone to understand what I'm about to point out here. The 2020 NFL draft for the Las Vegas Raiders, you had a wide receiver who killed somebody in a car crash. You had a defensive back who got into a car crash on his way to team practice, fled the scene, and was in a hit and run on his way, by the way, to make death threats and to point guns on Instagram Live. Great job, John Gruden. Fantastic job, Mike Mayock. You couldn't have picked a worse piece of characters if you tried. No, seriously, I don't know how they did it. I don't know how you hit the roulette wheel both back-to-back times. But the Las Vegas Raiders in 2020 managed to pick two of the worst characters in the first round back-to-back. And since I like to add salt in the wound, and I love to add more insult to injury. By the way, the Damien Arnett pick was terrible. But I also want to point out that 3 picks later, the Minnesota Vikings took wide receiver Justin Jefferson from LSU. So, they could have taken Justin Jefferson, a Pro Bowl wide receiver, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL today. But instead, they took a guy who liked to make threats on Instagram Live and was in a car crash and fled from the scene. Because that's what the Las Vegas Raiders do. But we're also going to keep on going because it gets a heck of a lot worse. In the second round, the Las Vegas Raiders decided, you know what? We're going to double down on our terrible drafting, and we are going to draft a player that we are going to cut not even 1 year in. We are going to draft a running back in Lynn Bowden, who we are going to get rid of, and we're going to trade not even 3 months later. Also, this is the same guy who only spent 1 season in the NFL and is currently out of the league. And yeah, they drafted him, by the way, in the 3rd round. But let's keep going, shall we? The Las Vegas Raiders in the 3rd round, thanks to the Khalil Mack trade, got Bryan Edwards at wide receiver. Now, at face value, Bryan Edwards is a good pick. Bryan Edwards had an excellent performance in 2021 with the Las Vegas Raiders. He's had 4 touchdowns. He's had about 700 receiving yards. He was going to be a vital part of the Las Vegas Raiders in 2022. However, Bryan Edwards got traded this offseason for a 5th round pick. Bryan Edwards is not even on the Raiders anymore. Now, Bryan Edwards is not a bad pick, but the fact that they let him go is really astonishing to the Las Vegas Raiders. But let's keep on going. Later in the draft, thanks to the trade that they made with New England, they get linebacker Tanner Muse. Now, Tanner Muse has moved on to Seattle, but they let him go after his first year. All right, he played 1 year with them, got injured, had a foot injury, and then was cut before year 2. So that was another pick that they failed on. The Las Vegas Raiders also kept on going and started making fantastic decisions by choosing offensive lineman John Simpson. Now, on paper, John Simpson has been okay, but he has not been an amazing player for the Las Vegas Raiders. So throughout this entire draft, they hit on one pick. John Gruden and Mike Mayock hit on one pick out of the 6 that they had in this draft. The fact that this could be labeled as one of the worst draft classes in modern history shows you how bad and how blinded Mike Mayock and John Gruden were at drafting. Oh, and by the way, keep in mind that these two were supposed to be draft experts. These two guys were supposed to be great at drafting. John Gruden had a quarterback camp that he did with upcoming NFL draft prospects. Mike Mayock was the analyst that they called on at ESPN for years. So John Gruden and Mike Mayock were supposed to be one of the best draft scouts, analysts, experts at ESPN. And in 4 years, managed to screw up the Las Vegas Raiders and set them back when it came to their drafting. I don't know if I should applaud it or if I should be facepalming it. You know what? I'm going to do both. And then let's get to the final episode of the John Gruden, Mike Mayock era, and that was 2021. Now, 2021, the Las Vegas Raiders, they drafted offensive tackle Alex Leatherwood, who was the Outland Trophy winner at Alabama. And like I mentioned earlier in the show, they have cut Alex Leatherwood. They let go of him not even 1 year after drafting him. He has now found a new home in Chicago. And because I am a very fascinated Chicago Bears fan, I really hope that Alex Leatherwood turns into a phenomenal offensive tackle in Chicago. Just out of spite, it would be really interesting if Alex Leatherwood goes to Chicago and then becomes the tackle he was supposed to be in Las Vegas. Because I would not be shocked if that ended up being the reality. But later in that draft, there's also been some interesting moves that have happened. They also drafted center Jimmy Morrissey from Pittsburgh, who, by the way, is now in Houston because the Las Vegas Raiders waived him and then got signed off the practice squad by Houston. Later in that draft, the Las Vegas Raiders decided, you know what, we're going to double down on offense. How about we go and get ourselves a guy that could be an awesome player for us? You know what, how about we go out and we get someone that could really help the organization? And then immediately let him go. I mean, understand that Divine Diablo, one of the best names in football, Trayvon Morig, Malcolm Kunitz, Tyree Gillespie, who's now in Tennessee, by the way. So you pretty much have let go of 3 of your 7 players, not even after 1 year. And Nate Hobbs, by the way, the 5th-round pick, looks like the main bright spot. However, he was arrested for a DUI, and the police found him asleep at the wheel. So maybe that's another character thing. I hope it's not, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was. So when it comes to the Las Vegas Raiders organization, this half hour has been brought to you by the Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com. My angle to all of you is that I was 1,000% right. I was 1,000% correct that the John Gruden experiment failed in Las Vegas. I was 1,000% correct that John Gruden was going to set back the Raiders, not make them better. And considering Mike Mayock, a guy that I thought was going to be a very bad decision from the beginning, it should be a lesson to the rest of the league. Do not bring in an expert to be your general manager. Because there's a difference between being a talking head on ESPN and being a general manager having to make decisions on the field. Okay, there's a big difference between making a mock draft and doing the actual thing. So my angle to Las Vegas Raiders, because I'm going to give a bit of constructive criticism here, is that John Gruden and Mike Mayock was a fail. John Gruden and Mike Mayock was a disaster, was a failure in Las Vegas. But here's the bright spot. Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels look like they know what they're doing. Okay, the 2022 NFL Draft, if you actually examine what the Raiders have done, I will say I actually like the moves. I believe them trading for Davante Adams, making him their first-round pick, was a smart move. Yeah, you can't mess up a first-round pick if you trade it for a superstar. And Davante Adams, who's a top 5 player in the league, is a superstar. He's the best wide receiver in the NFL right now. So the Las Vegas Raiders made a smart move by getting the best wide receiver in the NFL with their first-round pick. The Las Vegas Raiders then move on, and with their actual second-round pick, they make another smart move. Understand that they then go out and they acquire a guy that can make themselves better. The Las Vegas Raiders, they go out and they acquire a guy that could make them a solid force to be reckoned with. They go out and they get Dylan Parham as an offensive lineman. So Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels in one draft went after their biggest need first. They went and got a guard in Dylan Parham, who's going to be starting for the Raiders, by the way. But you're going to have a rookie guard who they drafted with their first pick. Very solid move. And then the Las Vegas Raiders, they go later in the draft and they get a guy who's going to be great for them. They go out and get running back Zamir White, who's going to replace Josh Jacobs. They get Zamir White, who is the running back of the future in Las Vegas. And on top of that, it's also the same Las Vegas Raiders who then go in the draft, have multiple picks later in the draft, and they acquire depth. They acquire some stability in the roster. Not only do they go out and they get a guy, like Matthew Butler from Tennessee, but it's also the Las Vegas Raiders who then go out and trade more draft capital to get more back. There's also the same Las Vegas team that kept on doing this perfect thing, where they would trade down to acquire more assets. They would trade down to acquire more assets. So I will say to Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler, my constructive criticism and my positive on the John Gruden failure is that Josh McDaniels in one draft did what John Gruden could not do in 4. All right, Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler made one positive move that John Gruden and Mike Mayock failed at 4 years in a row. Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler and the scouting department as well, gotta give credit to them. The Las Vegas Raiders went after their biggest need, and they went and got it in the first round. The Las Vegas Raiders went and got the best wide receiver in the NFL as their number 1 pick. Understand, the Las Vegas Raiders, they did what John Gruden couldn't do. They fixed their biggest need. The biggest need the Las Vegas Raiders had was getting a legitimate number one weapon for Derek Carr. Biggest problem that Derek Carr had is that he did not have an established wide receiver since Amari Cooper. Getting Devontae Adams fixed that problem. So to Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels, I will sing your praises and I will give you credit. You did a fantastic job fixing the mistake that John Gruden and Mike Mayock did from 2018 to 2021. I hope for people here in Las Vegas that the Las Vegas Raiders do good in the future. I hope for Raiders fans around the world that Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels take the lessons from New England and transfer it to Las Vegas. Because the Raiders should be a great team. Raiders should be one of the best teams in the NFL. Now we're going to have to wait and see if they can get it done. So that was our Las Vegas Raiders segment, pretty much our Las Vegas segment here on the Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. So I just wanted to very quickly talk about that because, yes, Alex Leatherwood did get cut by the Raiders, and that was our Las Vegas segment. And I also want to briefly mention, because I can, go to our YouTube channel, hit the like button, turn on notification bell, and share it with all your friends and family. We appreciate your support. So go to our YouTube channel, The Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. We appreciate your support. Also, go to PR Connections Radio. Either it's the website, prconnectionsradio.com, the YouTube channel, PR Connections Radio, or go to the Facebook page at the PR Connections Radio and watch all the content they have on here. Cozy Stone, Brian Gardner, Sandra. I'm sorry, I'm not going to butcher your last name. I know I did it once. I will say, Shirley, I'm a big fan of everyone who's on PR Connections Radio. I like what PR Connections Radio is doing. And also a shout out to Guy Dawson as well. If it wasn't for Guy Dawson, PR Connections Radio wouldn't exist, period. So go watch all the fantastic content on prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media, and watch every new episode of the Sports Angle on prconnectionsradio.com. This is episode 23. Episode 24 is going to be this upcoming Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Mountain, 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern. And I will say that I appreciate all the people who watch this show. You got to start somewhere. So for the hundreds of people watching, I definitely appreciate your support. And I'm really happy that everyone has contributed and has really been watching this show from day one. So I will say from your host's heart, thank you to everyone who's been watching this show. I definitely appreciate that. Now, the NFL, they have had their roster cuts. So I'm going to go over the notable ones. I'm not going to talk about every single team. That would take absolutely forever. But I want to talk about the notable guys who got cut from the NFL roster. Now, O.J. Howard is where I'm going to start out. The Buffalo Bills have released former first-round pick tight end O.J. Howard after signing him this offseason. Now, on one hand, I understand why they did it. I comprehend why O.J. Howard was cut by the Buffalo Bills. You have Dawson Knox. You have a really solid tight end core already. And when it comes to O.J. Howard, yes, he can block well, but his playmaking ability has really never been there. O.J. Howard was supposed to be this playmaker, was supposed to be this tight end that was supposed to go out and be a playmaking machine out there in Tampa Bay. He was going to be signed by Buffalo to add some playmaking. And O.J. Howard has never been that guy. I don't know if it's a mental thing, if it's a physical thing, but O.J. Howard has never been the it guy at tight end. When it was Tampa Bay, Rob Gronkowski and Cameron Brate got in the way. Buffalo Bills, Dawson Knox has gotten in the way. So them cutting O.J. Howard, the Buffalo Bills, on their final day of roster cuts, it was a bit surprising, but when you actually sit back and analyze it, it shouldn't have been. Because O.J. Howard is a blocking tight end and is solid at the blocking aspect of it, but his playmaking, his catching, his route running has left a lot to be desired. So that was really the first roster cut that surprised me, was that O.J. Howard with the Buffalo Bills. Chicago Bears, since I'm a Bears fan, I got to talk about this. Defensive back Thomas Graham was really surprising, and a longtime offensive lineman, Michael Schofield, was also released as well. Now, the reason why Thomas Graham was a surprise, he was a second-year defensive back. This is a guy that was on the backup role last year. He was on the practice squad for a little bit, but he had the potential to develop into a solid defensive back. I really believe that he could be a slot corner in the NFL. I thought him and Tavon Young were going to have a little bit of a battle. But his versatility, I believe, was going to keep him on the NFL roster. So really unfortunate that they had to release Thomas Graham out there in Chicago. Maybe they could bring him back on the practice squad like they did last year. Hopefully the Bears just don't get rid of him, because I do like him. Michael Schofield, his depth at offensive line. So I was really surprised about that. And I also want to quickly talk about, there was this guy that got released that I actually thought was surprising. So the Cincinnati Bengals, them getting rid of their punter. I mean, I understand punters are not the flashiest position. I understand that the punter is not the most insane position to watch. But them getting rid of a punter who has been there for a while is really interesting. So them getting rid of Drew Chrisman, surprising move with Cincinnati Bengals. Dallas Cowboys, they released backup quarterback Cooper Rush. Now, Cooper Rush, he has been with Dallas for a couple of years. I mean, he has been a stable rock in Dallas. I mean, this is a guy who also had to beat out Ben DiNucci, who also got released by the Cowboys. And when it came to Cooper Rush, I believe that him and Will Grier was going to be the third quarterback, and Cooper Rush was going to be the backup quarterback he has been for the last couple of years. Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys do not look at it that way. So the Dallas Cowboys are releasing longtime backup quarterback Cooper Rush. Man, that was a surprise. That was a surprise. You also have had a situation where you had the Detroit Lions. They got rid of some running backs like Goodwin, Ikwabuki. Green Bay Packers, them getting rid of Juwan Winfrey at wide receiver. I really thought they were going to keep their wide receiver core, kind of add some depth to their wide receivers. Honestly, I thought they were going to do that, but they really did not. Houston Texans, after signing Marlon Mack from the Indianapolis Colts, they have released him. This was a veteran running back, was going to get some touches this year, but the Houston Texans did not agree. The Indianapolis Colts, getting rid of backup running back Philip Lindsay, getting rid of Pro Bowl running back Philip Lindsay. Now, I understand that he is not the guy he was in Denver. He was not the guy he was in Houston. But this guy who's a Pro Bowl running back, him getting released and getting cut by the Indianapolis Colts, that was a shocker. Laquan Treadwell, the guy who got signed to Jacksonville to be their wide receiver, to add depth to the wide receiver position, they let him go after signing him last year. So that really tells you the direction in the Jacksonville Jaguars are going at. Kansas City Chiefs can go of former All-Pro wide receiver Gordon, former University of Utah wide receiver Josh Gordon. And I will say, when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs, I mean, this guy was a healthy scratch. He really didn't play much for Kansas City. But anytime a former All-Pro wide receiver gets let go, it is a headline nonetheless. And as we are talking about the NFL roster cuts, I mentioned Lynn Bowden with the Las Vegas Raiders, the running back, the former running back of the Las Vegas Raiders. Well, he also got let go by Miami as well. So it really shows you that he has not been, this great player in the NFL. So it's unfortunate to see, but he has been let go by the Miami Dolphins as well. Justin Bethel for the New England Patriots. This is a guy who's been in the NFL for a solid decade. Defensive back. He was with Arizona. He was with New England. So Justin Bethel being released, I thought that, he was going to be a special teams expert, going to be a guy that could add some stability to defensive backs out there in New England. So unfortunately, he has been let go by New England. The New Orleans Saints trading Gardner Johnson to the Philadelphia Eagles. That was a shock factor right there. New York Giants letting go of Davis Webb, believing in Daniel Jones. That was a little bit of a surprise. You also had with the Pittsburgh Steelers letting go of Anthony McFarland. He was a guy that could add some depth to the running back position, but they let him go. You also ended up having Justin Coleman from the Seattle Seahawks. I believe that he was going to be a veteran. He was going to be a guy that could add some stability to defensive backs, but they let him go as well. And the Tennessee Titans letting go of a 13-year veteran with the team, Brent Kern, the punter for the Tennessee Titans, the former All-Pro punter in the NFL. He is no longer in Tennessee. And the Washington Commanders having Jarrett Peterson, the running back who's only been there for a while. This is a guy that had a lot of praise last year when he had to come into the role in Washington. So he will either be a practice squad member or he is going to be a solid running back on the practice squad for another organization. So that was talking about the roster cuts here on the NFL. Talking about the 2022 offseason, the roster cuts in the NFL. And there was also the report that came out about the NFL waiver wire. Now, the NFL waiver wire is a really interesting topic because of the draft order or the waiver order of the NFL. Because every single year they released the waiver wire. They pretty much reveal who's going to be first up when a player gets put on waivers. So the Jacksonville Jaguars, they are first. Expect them to take advantage of that. Detroit Lions are second. Houston Texans third. Both New York teams back-to-back 4 and 5. Carolina 6, Chicago 7, Atlanta 8, Denver 9, and Seattle 10. If there's any organization who's going to take full advantage of that, it will be the AFC South Division winner, and that's the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville being first up on the waiver wire is going to be vital. It's going to be important to Jacksonville. Doug Peterson is probably going to take more advantage of that than he normally does. And when it comes to having the number one selection on the waiver wire, that means that when a very valuable player gets put on waivers, you are first in line. You have that one-way ticket. You have your express way to be getting some solid talent in the NFL. So waiver wire, Jacksonville Jaguars, they're going to be first in line. Chicago Bears 7th, Seattle Seahawks 10th. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. And, I really try to not be critical when it comes to a certain list. But recently, the four-letter network, ESPN, came out with their top 100 players in the NFL. I understand that ESPN came out with their list, and the fact that this is one of the worst lists I've ever seen should really tell you all you need to know. Understand that the NFL came out with their top 100 list. And I'm going to be very nice here, and I'm just going to break down the top 10. I am not going to go, oh, wait, this guy is number 77. Maybe he shouldn't be number 77. I'm not going to go there. Instead, I'm just going to break down the top 10 because I have a lot to say here. Tom Brady is at number 1. Tom freaking Brady is the best player in the NFL according to this list. Tom Brady is not even the best quarterback in the NFL anymore. Tom Brady is not even the second best quarterback in the NFL. The fact that they have Tom Brady as the number 1 player in 2022 shows you how biased, shows you how childish, and shows you how disinterested they are in the NFL. Tom Brady last year was not better than Aaron Rodgers. Tom Brady last year was not better than Patrick Mahomes. You can make an argument he was not better than Josh Allen. You can make an argument he was not better than Matthew Stafford. If you can make an argument that the number 1 player in the NFL is not even the best in his position, then he simply should not be number 1. Number 2 is Aaron Donald, and Aaron Donald makes sense. I understand why Aaron Donald's on there. I've seen people have Aaron Donald at number 2. Him being at number 1, I've seen people do that. I appreciate what Aaron Donald has done. He has been the most dominant defensive player in the NFL for the past decade. Aaron Donald has been a force to be reckoned with every single season. He's been a multi-time All-Pro. He's been a multi-time Pro Bowler. He has been a Super Bowl champion. Aaron Donald has checked off every single box, every single list that you have him in. Aaron Rodgers at number 3. I would have him at number 2. I'm going to do my list in a second, but I would have Aaron Rodgers up there. Aaron Rodgers, as much as I dislike Green Bay, and I always will dislike Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers has been a cornerstone. Aaron Rodgers has been the rock that Green Bay has always needed. When it comes to the Green Bay Packers, you don't have Aaron Rodgers. The Green Bay Packers don't win a division. If Green Bay doesn't have Aaron Rodgers, then Green Bay is not making the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers is so valuable to Green Bay that if Green Bay doesn't have Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay doesn't make it to an NFC Championship game. That is how valuable Aaron Rodgers is. So going down the top 10 here on this list from ESPN, one of the worst lists I've ever seen, they have Cooper Kupp at number 4. Look, Cooper Kupp is a solid wide receiver, but he is not the best wide receiver in the NFL. I'm really going to point out the bias of the LA Rams here. You have Aaron Donald at number 2. You have Cooper Kupp at number 4. Cooper Kupp should not even be in the top 5. Honestly, he should not even be in the top 10 when it comes to the NFL. Cooper Kupp, he's had one solid year. He had one fantastic year in the NFL. That doesn't make you a top 5 player in the league. Number 5, Jonathan Taylor, kind of around the same way. Jonathan Taylor had a fantastic 2022. If you want to put him in top 10, go right ahead. But do not put Jonathan Taylor in the top 5. He has not been consistent enough to do that. Number 6, TJ Watt, one of the best defensive players over the last 5 years. Been reliable, multi-time Pro Bowler, multi-time All-Pro. He deserves to be there. Devontae Adams at number 7. Devontae Adams, best wide receiver in the NFL, been doing it for the last 8 years. Solid. Number 8, Patrick Mahomes needs to be higher. Jalen Ramsey at number 9 should not even be on here. And Travis Kelce at number 10, best tight end in the NFL. However, Patrick Mahomes has been there for the last 5 years. Has that helped Travis Kelce? Most likely, yeah. So when it comes to the top 10 when it comes to the NFL, I'm going to make this very simple. Number 1 needs to be Aaron Donald. Number 2, Aaron Rodgers. Number 3, Devontae Adams. Number 4 should be Patrick Mahomes. Number 5, this is actually very difficult. I'm not going to lie. I really had to go back and forth on this one. But at number 5, when it comes to the NFL, when it comes to the top players in the league, I'm going to get a lot of hate for this one. I know it. At number 5, I'm actually going to go with a guy that really should be up here, and that's Travis Kelce. So at number 5, you have Travis Kelce. Number 4, Patrick Mahomes. Number 3, Devontae Adams. Number 2, Aaron Rodgers. And number 1 would be Aaron Donald. That is who I have at my top 10. Because understand that when it comes to the NFL, I don't have Tom Brady in the top 5. He has not been the best quarterback in the NFL for the past 2 years. He hasn't been. Cooper Kupp, he needs to do it for one more year. Show me you could be great for another season before I put you in the top 5. Jonathan Taylor, same way. You need to do it for one more year. TJ Watt, he is in the top 10. Jalen Ramsey should not even be there. So when it comes to the NFL top 100 list, when it came to their top 10, it is laughable. It is absolutely disturbing. And I say that it is a joke that they still do it. It is a laughingstock that the NFL top 100 still exists. It's not credible. It's not interesting. It's not entertaining. So why do we still watch it? Now, getting into our NHL segment here on the Sports Angle. I will point out that the NHL segment is going to be a lot of great things. However, I need to talk about the upcoming 2023 NFL Draft. Because I got to do my final prediction for the 2022 NFL season. I'm going to predict the bottom 5 teams in the NFL. I'm going to give you the top 5 drafting order for the 2023 NFL Draft. At number 5, I have the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears, they're in rebuild mode. You trade away Khalil Mack. You trade away a bunch of guys like Akeem Hicks. Eddie Goldman's not there anymore. You've gotten rid of some talent like Allen Robinson. Chicago Bears are focusing on the future. Chicago Bears are focusing on Justin Fields. And with them having $100 million in salary cap next year, Chicago Bears having all this money in free agency next season, they're going to focus on the future. Getting a top 5 pick will help with that. Number 4, the Washington Commanders. In Wentz, we don't trust. Carson Wentz is not a franchise quarterback anymore. The Washington Commanders do not have a solid quarterback like Alex Smith anymore. So Washington, you got Chase Young. He's probably going to be out for a while. You have guys like De'Aaron Payne. You have Jonathan Allen. You have some solid talent on defense, but your offense is laughable. The Washington Commanders are going to have arguably one of the worst offenses in the NFL this year. So at number 4 in the 2023 NFL Draft, it will be the Washington Commanders. With the 3rd pick in the upcoming 2023 NFL Draft, an end of an era, I have the New England Patriots at this spot. Bill Belichick, you are on your last chapter. Bill Belichick and New England Patriots are on their decline. They are going to be the worst team in the AFC East next year. Understand the New England Patriots, you are going to see Mac Jones be exposed in 2022. That running game is going to be flattened. Wide receiver core, what wide receiver core? Your tight ends, they're overpaid. Your offensive line, laughable. So yeah, you're going to have somewhat of a solid defense, but your offense is going to be eaten for lunch. So New England Patriots, I have them at number 3. And with the second pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, I have the Houston Texans, help wanted everywhere. The Houston Texans, what do they not need? Quarterback, Davis Mills, I hope he's the future, but it doesn't look like it. Running back, you got rid of Marlon Mack. I really don't see a franchise running back. Wide receiver, Brandon Cooks is on a 2-year deal. They can easily get rid of him if they need to be. Your offensive line is being built. It's not there yet. And your defense, hey, go ahead and name me a player on defense. In fact, I'm going to give you half a minute. All right, half a minute. Name me a player on the Houston Texans defense. Because I looked up their depth chart, and the lack of name recognition is alarming. The fact that the Houston Texans defense has so little amount of players on it is shocking. And it really doesn't matter that you have Lovie Smith, a defensive guru, on that team. When it comes to the Houston Texans, it is going to be a long season. And by the way, for anyone who's wondering, who is their defensive players? So you have Jonathan Greenard, Jerry Hughes, Malik Collins. You have Kurt Hinish as your front 4. Oh, yeah, by the way, if anyone knows who any of those are, congratulations. Your linebackers, you have Jake Hansen, Christian Kirksey, and Camus Gorgier Hill. And then your defensive backs, the only one you may have recognized was Jonathan Owens because he is dating one of the greatest Olympians in Simone Biles. You have Jalen Pater, Steven Nelson, Derek Stingley Jr. It's really unfortunate, but that defense, man, there's so little amount of names on here. So here's the Texans with them needing all the help they can get next year. Number 2 in the draft. And then number 1, tank for Strode 2023. I have the Seattle Seahawks. Interesting enough, I was in Seattle recently. As a matter of fact, I wanted to record a show in Seattle, but I didn't have my recording equipment. And the lack of Seattle Seahawks gear was alarming. The Seattle Mariners have taken over Seattle. Yeah, there's a little bit of Seattle Kraken stuff. There was a little bit of Seattle Seahawks stuff when I went to Kohl's. But the Seattle Seahawks have now taken a back seat to the Seattle Mariners. So Seattle Seahawks, they really have a lack of an audience now. The fan base has pretty much left Seattle. And this team, doesn't matter if it was Drew Lock, Geno Smith, Tim Tebow, Kyle Orton. It doesn't matter who you have at quarterback. The Seattle Seahawks are going to have the worst offensive line in the NFL. DK Metcalf is the only player you have available. And you have no quarterback under center. Defensively wise, the Seattle Seahawks are bare on defense. And more importantly, when it comes to Seattle Seahawks, it is the end of an era. Pete Carroll will be gone after this year. John Snyder will be gone at the end of this year. And you can start over the rebuild of Seattle. So tank for Ohio State quarterback CJ Strode. He's going to be the number 1 pick next year. And he will be the guy taken by Seattle in the first pick. So to refresh your memory on the draft order here, I have Seattle going number 1, Houston going number 2, New England going number 3, Washington at 4, and then Chicago to round out the top 5. Let me know if you agree or disagree down below. And now getting into the NFL. Now the NHL, they have captains. Okay, that has been a vital part of the NHL for a long time. Now, interesting enough, there's a bunch of teams with no captains right now. And as a matter of fact, there are 7 organizations with no captain with the NHL. The Anaheim Ducks, Arizona Coyotes, Buffalo Sabres, Calgary Flames, Montreal Canadiens, and Philadelphia Flyers, alongside the Seattle Kraken, do not have a captain. So for this episode, I'm going to give you my prediction. I'm going to give you my argument for these 7 players becoming captain in the NHL. First, we're going to start out with the Anaheim Ducks. Now, the Anaheim Ducks, I'm actually going to go with Jacob Silfverberg. Now, Jacob Silfverberg, he's been a long-time member of the Anaheim Ducks, been with them since 2014, and Ryan Getzlaf, he was their captain for a long time. The Anaheim Ducks, they are an organization that believes in loyalty. They're a team that likes to have, somebody there. They like to have someone who's going to be there for the long-term future. So, a guy like Jacob Silfverberg, who's been there for 8 seasons already, a guy who's been there is going to be locked up for a long time. I say Jacob Silfverberg will be the captain of the Anaheim Ducks. He will continue the legacy that Ryan Getzlaf had. I will point out that, yes, I am a big fan of Jacob Silfverberg. If there was anybody that could maybe do it, John Klingberg, if he was there for more than 1 year. 20-year-old Jamie Drysdale, I think he'll be an amazing defenseman. If he's a guy that could really take off in his career, he would be the guy. I would say Cam Fowler has been a guy who's going to be there since 2026. Long-time stalwart for the Anaheim Ducks. The Anaheim Ducks, they really believe in loyalty out there in Anaheim. Ryan Getzlaf, Corey Perry, Teemu Selanne. So, I would say most likely Jacob Silfverberg, maybe John Klingberg if he was staying for longer than 1 year. Cam Fowler, he's been there for a long time. But I'll go Jacob Silfverberg. The Arizona Coyotes, man, this team is hard to predict. Because not only do they trade away their players a lot, but the Arizona Coyotes have such a stockpile of picks, it's really hard to say. I could go with a young guy and say 22-year-old Jack McBain could be a guy. I could say, maybe someone like Joshua Brown who's on defense. Maybe go with someone who's been there for a long time, like a Shane Gostisbehere or a Patrick Nemeth. But when it comes to the Arizona Coyotes, I'm actually going to keep it very simple. And I'm actually going to say that when it comes to the Arizona Coyotes organization, when it comes to them, I'm actually going to go with Clayton Keller. I'm going to go with a guy that really has a lot to offer. Clayton Keller's been there really since being drafted in the first round. He's been a stable force out there with the Arizona Coyotes. So I got him being that guy because I really see him as someone who could really be a solid guy out there in Arizona. And the Arizona Coyotes really don't have much to offer anyway. So I have Clayton Keller as that guy. If I had to give an honorable mention, however, Nick Schmaltz, 26 years old, been a center for a couple of years. He could be a guy you probably would focus on as well. Boston Bruins, you already know they have Patrice Bergeron. There's a possibility he could have been moved this year. He stays in Boston. Buffalo, they have no captain right now. Jack Eichel's gone. He's now in Vegas. But that leaves an idea. And some people are going to like this. Some people are not. Here's my idea for a captain. And I'm going to explain this. My captain of the future for the Buffalo Sabres. He's not flashy. He is not going to be a big name. He is not someone that is going to impress you in any way. But man, I think he is a captain. I think he could be a leader in the locker room for the Buffalo Sabres. Give me Victor Olofsson. Victor Olofsson, he is a 40-point scorer for the Buffalo Sabres. I like his attitude. I like his tenacity. I like his drive. So Victor Olofsson, I would say him being the next captain of the Buffalo Sabres. Please do not have it be Jeff Skinner. Please do not have it be him. It's Tage Thompson, go right ahead. But I say Victor Olofsson, he would be my pick for Buffalo Sabres' next captain. I really like Victor Olofsson. I like what he has to offer out there in Buffalo. Calgary Flames, they need a captain. Obviously, we all know what happened with the Johnny Gaudreau situation. Yeah, we all understand that Mark Giordano, he was also taken, so he's no longer with Calgary. So, if you're the Calgary Flames, you got to have a captain. How about Noah Hanifin? Noah Hanifin, 25 years of age, but he has been the best defenseman that the Calgary Flames have had since Mark Giordano. Noah Hanifin has been a reliable defenseman. He's not been great, but he's been reliable. So for the Calgary Flames, I'm going to go with defenseman Noah Hanifin. Buffalo Sabres, I'm going to go with winger Victor Olofsson. Arizona Coyotes, center Nick Schmaltz. And for the Anaheim Ducks, I will say that they will go with Jacob Silverberg, longtime stalwart out there in Anaheim. Now, going through all the captains, the ones who are currently a captain, Jonathan Toews, he might be on his way out in Chicago. We'll see what happens there. Colorado Avalanche, Gabriel Landeskog. Yeah, it's not Nathan McKinnon. It's Gabriel Landeskog. Columbus Blue Jackets, Boone Jenner. Johnny Gaudreau being there. I'm surprised he didn't steal it from him. Jamie Benn out there in Dallas, long-time Dallas Star. Dylan Larkin, he's not going anywhere. Connor McDavid, best hockey player in the world. Alexander Barkov for the Florida Panthers. I mean, this is a guy that has been reliable. I mean, ever since he got drafted second overall for a decade, he has been in Florida. Anze Kopitar has been a long-time stalwart in LA. He's not going anywhere. Jared Spurgeon, ever since he got acquired from Minnesota, has been reliable. So that leaves you with Minnesota. Now, Minnesota, I get it. Okay, I get it. When it comes to Montreal, they have a lot of intriguing options. Montreal Canadiens have a mix of young and old guys on their roster. And considering that they can't just go out and put Carey Price as the captain, believe me, they would have tried to done it by now. I'm going to give you a guy that I actually would be surprised if he doesn't become the guy. Because when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens and their lack of a solidified guy, when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens and their lack of someone who could really be the guy in Montreal, I'm going to go with someone in Christian Dorviak. I mean, this is a guy who he came over from Arizona. He's been a goal scorer. He's been a guy out there. So give me Christian Dorviak with the Montreal Canadiens. Now, continuing with the captaincy conversation, Roman Josi, one of the best defenders in Nashville. New Jersey Devils, Nico Hoyscher, former number 1 pick. It makes sense. New Jersey Devils, their counterpart, the New York Islanders, Anders Lee, took over for John Tavares. Has been a solid guy. New York Rangers, they announced Jacob Trouba. I actually think that's an excellent pick. I would have gone with somebody different, however. However, it's already been determined. It's already been decided. There's nothing I can really do about it. But I will say that Jacob Trouba going there, a little bit surprising, considering I would have gone with somebody different. I would have gone with Adam Fox myself. To me, Adam Fox really feels like a captain out there in the NHL. Ottawa Senators, Brady Tkachuk, it makes sense. So the Philadelphia Flyers, they have a captain vacancy right now. And when it comes to Philadelphia, there's really two ways you can do it. You could either go with a guy like Travis Korseny. You could go with a guy like Ivan Provorov. But I'm going to go with somebody just a tad different. I'm going to go with someone who I genuinely believe is the future in Philadelphia. I'm going to go with someone that could be a future, Ring of Honor out there in Philadelphia. So instead, I'm actually going to go with Kevin Hayes. Now, Kevin Hayes was bashed when he got there. He's now become a solid guy. Sidney Crosby's been there forever in Pittsburgh. Of course, he's the captain. Logan Couture has been a long-time stalwart in San Jose. Now Seattle. Once again, I just came back from Seattle. Excellent play. Seattle Kraken was phenomenal. And because I actually talked to a few people about the Seattle Kraken, I am going to go out on a limb here. And talking to these people, talking to all the people out there in Seattle, I don't think that it's insane to say that Alexander Wenberg could be the captain. Alexander Wenberg, he's not going to be a flashy guy. He's not going to be somebody that's going to wow you. But what he is a leader. What he is somebody that could be a leader in the locker room. So I say Alexander Wenberg could be the next captain of the Seattle Kraken. I think that he's got a lot to offer. Ryan O'Reilly in St. Louis makes sense. Steven Stamkos at Tampa Bay, been one of the best players there. You have John Tavares in Toronto. He was pretty much given the captaincy. Bo Horvat might be on his way out, but he's still in Vancouver for now. Mark Stone, he might miss half of the year, but he's the captain in Vegas. Alex Ovechkin, one of the best hockey players to ever exist. And Blake Wheeler in Winnipeg has represented Winnipeg. Now, the hot seat in the NHL. What 5 teams are on the hot seat? The first one I got is the Anaheim Ducks. Dallas Eakins has been there for a couple of years, but they now have the talent. The Anaheim Ducks now have Trevor Zegras. They have Jamie Drysdale. Mason McTavish has, had a stellar juniors career. He's going to get his time in the NHL. John Gibson is an above-average goalie. So when it comes to Anaheim, they really need to prove or really show some improvement heading into next year. They would really be the first team on the hot seat in the NHL, considering that they now have the talent and they have the ability to become better out there. So I would say Anaheim is definitely number 1 on the hot seat. They definitely need to improve in the NHL. So Anaheim Ducks, they have the hottest seat right now. Columbus Blue Jackets would be second. They were about 10th in the Eastern Conference last year. Brad Larson, they brought him in second year in the with the Columbus Blue Jackets. You bring in Johnny Gaudreau. You have Pierre-Luc Dubois. There is a lot of this talent out there in Columbus. You have Patrick Laine. There is all of this talent that is out there in Columbus. They got to get it done, so they'd be number 2. Third is a team that I just visited, and that's the Seattle Kraken. Year 2, you have to show improvement. You can't just be in the bottom of the division. You got to be battling for 6th or 7th place in the Pacific Division. You cannot be in the back of the grid no more. And then the 4th team and the 5th team is going to be a little bit close to home. The 4th team on the hot seat will be the Vegas Golden Knights. The Vegas Golden Knights being on the hot seat should not be a surprise. They have the most money spent in terms of cap hit. They have the most amount of money spent on contracts. They have the biggest cap hit out of anybody in the NHL. Bruce Cassidy's an established guy. He's their new coach. You have a great top 6. Defense is solid. If you do not make the playoffs with all of that money you have spent, you are going to be on the hot seat. And lastly, at number 5 would be the Dallas Stars. You bring in Pete DeBoer. You have Jamie Benn. You have Tyler Seguin. You have Myra Heiskanen. You brought him back. The Dallas Stars have Jake Ottinger, one of the best young goalies in the NHL. So understand that when it comes to the Dallas Stars, if you do not perform, you are going to be very, very, very much on the hot seat. So number 1 in the hot seat is Anaheim. 2 is Columbus. 3 is Seattle. 4 Vegas. And 5 is Dallas. Now the goalie tandems in the NHL. The goalie tandems, there has been a lot of discussion about, who's the best goalie, who's the worst goalie. And as much as I hate to say it, there's always got to be a bottom 5. So the bottom 5 starting goalies in the NHL, and I'm going to explain this in logical terms. At number 5, the 5th worst starting goalie in the NHL. This is a guy who's been around for a while. This is a guy who has been in the NHL. He's been around multiple teams, and that is Alex Stalock. Alex Stalock has been a career backup. He's only making $750,000. However, Alex Stalock, doesn't matter if he was in San Jose, Minnesota, he has been reliable. He's not been great, but he's been reliable. And because of his reliability, that is why he's the 5th worst starting goaltender. Chicago is rebuilding. They really don't have much in terms of, promise in the NHL. The Chicago Blackhawks heading into this year, they do not have much in terms of reputation. Yeah, I don't have much of a reputation. So when it comes to expectations, Chicago Blackhawks don't have much either. So Alex Stalock at number 5. Number 4 would be the Seattle Kraken. Because when it comes to Seattle, when it comes to their goaltending, unfortunately, they bought at the wrong time. Chris Driedger, them getting him in the expansion draft, the Florida Panthers are probably happy that he went to Seattle because he has not lived up to the expectations. He has not lived up to the $3.5 million price tag. So, he's going to be in Seattle for 2 more years and he'll move on. But really has been disappointing as a starting goaltender. 3rd is the Vegas Golden Knights. Vegas Golden Knights right now, unfortunately, Robin Lehner is out. You have a situation where, in terms of starting goaltending, Laurent Brossoit is your guy. Laurent Brossoit has been a career backup in the NHL. And similar to Alex Stalock, he doesn't have the stability. He doesn't have the reliability that Alex Stalock has. So because he's been a career backup turned starter, that's why he is 3rd as the worst starting goalie in the NHL. Until he really shows that he could be a starting goaltender, I have to put him at 3. Thankfully, there's 2 teams that have worse starting goalies than him. Because if it wasn't for Craig Anderson in Buffalo at number 2, if it wasn't for who I have at number 1, Laurent Brossoit would be the worst. Craig Anderson's been in the league since 2000. Craig Anderson, yes, his story in Ottawa was emotional. But at 41 years old, he is still a starting goalie. And the thing is, he's not Marc-Andre Fleury. He's not Henrik Lundqvist. He's not any of that. So because of the fact that Craig Anderson is a starting goalie in 2022, shows you the lack of depth at goaltender in the NHL, really for the Buffalo Sabres. Also, Ben Bishop could have also been this guy as well if he actually could play. So, unfortunately, Malcolm Subban, Eric Comrie, Craig Anderson, Ben Bishop. They have the weakest in terms of goalie depth in the NHL, but they are not the worst. The worst is the Arizona Coyotes because of Ivan Provostov. The 23-year-old Russian goalie, he only had 3 appearances last year, but because of his young youthfulness, he has time to change this. I understand that because of how young he is, he could maybe come back from it. But based off of what I have seen, and understand that this guy, he has a 4.18 goals against average in his career. So he has not been a good goalie in the NHL. Maybe he could turn it around, but right now he would be the worst starting goalie in the NHL. We got about 5 minutes left here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. For all people watching on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the like button, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any episode of the Sports Angle. Also, share with all your friends and family. We appreciate your support. Go on to our Facebook where we try to post every single day. Go on to our Twitter at Sports Angle on PR. We ask poll questions on there all the time. And we also have a TikTok as well where we post content on Sundays. So that is our TikTok at Sports Angle on PR. Our Vegas segment, talking about the Las Vegas Aviators. They're getting into the final home games of the season. They're going to take on Tacoma starting next week. And then they're going to take on the Reno Aces on the final week of the MLB regular season. They're going to have a free t-shirt on September 20th. You're going to have take your dogs to the park on September 21st. $2 beer night on September 22nd. You're going to have fireworks galore on September 23rd. And you're going to have a vintage bobblehead night on September 24th. And then September 25th, the final home game of the season for the Las Vegas Aviators. Kids run the bases. So at 11 a.m. on Sunday, kids will get to run the bases on Sunday. Fantastic promotion for the Las Vegas Aviators. I also want to say that the Las Vegas Aviators, I want to give a shout out to them. We've been doing media. We've been going to some games for the Las Vegas Aviators. And what they are doing is incredible. And when it comes to AAA weekend, their AAA championship weekend will be at the end of September, early October. So October 1st and October 2nd, Saturday and Sunday, 2022, AAA championship weekend. So if you're in Las Vegas, go check that out. I will definitely be there. If I'm doing media or not, that is beside the point. Being at the AAA championship is what matters. And speaking of the standings for the AAA, I might as well bring this up. Because the way the AAA has it set up, the way the AAA playoff works is actually fantastic. Because they have it set up where you would have the Oklahoma City Dodgers taking on the Reno Aces in the Pacific Division. And then in the International Division, you will have you'll have 2 teams that will be battling it out in the International League alongside the Pacific Division. So, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. You're going to have 4 of the best minor league teams. You're going to have Oklahoma City taking on Reno on the Pacific side. And then on the international side, you're going to end up having, 2 teams over there as well. So it's going to be fantastic to see AAA Championship Weekend, October 1st and October 2nd, 2022. The Sports Angle is going to be there. And to round this out, the Las Vegas Aces, they are in the playoffs right now, taking on the Seattle Storm. Seattle Storm, they took game 1. It was 76-73. Las Vegas Aces, they look like they're going to hold out to win game 2. And semifinals right now has been incredible. I give a lot of credit to the Las Vegas Aces. They have been a phenomenal team. Ajaya Wilson has been the team leader in Las Vegas. Ajayi Wilson and Chelsea Gray have been the 1A, 1B out there in Las Vegas. Also, shout out to Ajayi Wilson for being Defensive Player of the Year in the WNBA, and guard Jackie Young for being Most Improved Player in the WNBA. So, round of applause to both of them. They've been working their butts off all year long. So, congrats to Ajayi Wilson on Defensive Player of the Year and guard Jackie Young on Most Improved Player. Becky Hammon has been Coach of the Year for the WNBA. Really has been Coach of the Year in basketball, period, for 2022. The fact that she has not been given an NBA job at this point is shocking because she has the talent to be an NBA coach. She needs to be an NBA coach at some point. And them being in the semifinals right now, WNBA, you're having the semifinals matchups as you speak. And, you have Seattle versus Las Vegas. You have Chicago versus Connecticut. And the winners of those matches are going to face off in the WNBA finals. So it's either going to be Chicago versus Las Vegas, Connecticut versus Seattle, Chicago versus Seattle, Connecticut versus Las Vegas. So you are going to have some incredible WNBA finals action between Las Vegas versus Chicago or Connecticut versus Seattle. Personally, I want it to be Chicago versus Las Vegas because of my love for the city of Chicago, being a Bears fan, being a Cubs fan, supporting the Chicago Bulls, liking the Chicago Blackhawks growing up. Chicago Sky, you got Candace Parker, one of the most iconic and one of the most respected women athletes out there. And Las Vegas Aces being in my backyard, being here in sports entertainment capital of the world, they have impressed me since coming here. So WNBA finals, I hope, will be Chicago versus Las Vegas. And hey, who knows? Maybe the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, we could be there for the WNBA finals and watch the Las Vegas Aces take on the Chicago Sky in person. Who knows? Maybe that could be a great experience. So wrapping up the show here on the Sports Angle, we have a episode 24 coming up on Friday, September 2nd, 7 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Mountain, 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern. We're going to break down the latest news in the NFL and talk about updates in the NHL world. So it's going to be a fantastic show planned out for all of you. Follow me on social media at IanRakelli18 and follow the show at Sports Angle on PR. And until next time, have a great one. Take care of yourself. Love, your family, your friends. Love everyone around you. And keep watching sports because it is a fantastic sports world. Have a good one.